So I started that interview by asking her if she could guarantee to stick with the current government policy and uprate benefits by inflation this autumn.
That's a decision for later on this year. What I was focused on in making sure we deal with the energy costs, people were facing bills of up to £6,000. We've taken decisive action on that. The typical family won't pay more than approximately £2,500, as well as taking action to get the British economy going. That's been the priority, but of course we will look at that issue in due course.
But the government has made a decision on that. There is no reason to change it, otherwise all government policy would be completely up in the air. You were in the cabinet that supported it originally. Penny Mordaunt, your cabinet colleague, says that benefits should be increased in line with inflation. There are many, many in your party who agree. You're out of step with your party again on this, aren't you?
Well, as I've said, we haven't yet made a decision on this issue. We will make a decision in due course. The important priority was helping people get through this winter. And as well as the energy price guarantee of £2,500, we're also giving the most vulnerable households extra support of £1,200.
Yeah.
So we will need to look at it in the round when the time comes.
So does that mean you're looking at all government policy all over again? Are you starting from scratch on everything?
We have made certain commitments, but we are going to have to look at things differently as we move forward. We're in a very, very difficult international situation. We've got the war in Ukraine perpetrated by Putin. We've seen rising interest rates around the world, rising inflation around the world, a slowing global economy. So, of course, the government does have to adapt to what we're facing in those very difficult international circumstances.
What's the argument for not increasing benefits in line with inflation?
Well, we're going to have the discussion about this when we need to make.
Now. People are listening. What's the argument for not doing it?
We need to make the decision in the round with all the other priorities the government needs to look at. But the important thing was that we've acted on the immediate issue that families are facing this winter, which is the cost of energy, as well as making sure that we're reversing the national insurance rise so people are keeping more of their own money. We're taking the action to get the roads built, get the broadband built so that we can avoid an economic slowdown. Those were the immediate priorities. And of course, we will need to look at the uprating issue in due course.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an immediate priority for lots of families who thought that it was settled and they knew what was going to happen this autumn. But do you see what the problem is here? Because
the decision is for next year. I think that's really important.
Well, the decision will be made this autumn. That's when the decision will be made. And people have already been told by the previous Prime Minister, you are a member of that government, that this will happen. And now you're saying to people, well, actually, we're tearing up everything that's gone before and it may not happen. That's quite a big deal for a lot of people.
What our focus has been is on helping people this autumn and winter, and I think that's right. People are facing fuel bills of up to £6,000. Businesses were facing going bust. We've dealt decisively with that issue. We're now looking at next year, and we will announce the decision in due course. But what I don't want to do is rush into precipitate decisions for next year whilst we're still dealing with...
Well, let's be clear, it will be taken this year. It will be taken in a couple of weeks' time. But do you see what the problem is here? Because when you U-turned on the 45p tax rate, you held your hands up, and lots of people liked that you did that, and you said, I made the mistake of not explaining the policy to people in advance, and I didn't listen to my party. And I'm here asking you for an explanation of a potentially very big decision, and you can't give me one, and your party, including your own cabinet, are saying, we don't like it, Prime Minister, and you're not listening. You're heading for exactly the same thing all over again.
No decision has been made on this issue, and we will take the decision, in time, and we will consider all the issues. So it's not similar at all in that respect. The decision hasn't been made.
But your plan for growth
I'm going to be discussing it with my colleagues rather than live on air, Kate.
Well, but as you said, the markets need to see an indication of the direction of travel, and at the moment they don't have that because you can't give it to me. But let's move on, because your growth plan does involve some very difficult policies, including on immigration and on planning. You've had to U-turn on an already difficult policy. I mean, what happens if your party says no to those too?
Well, what we're doing on planning is we're putting in place specific investment zones where local communities want to see growth, they want to see development, they want to see housing. I've just been on a visit this morning in Birmingham looking at some fantastic new life sciences park. That's exactly the type of thing we want to see. And what I'm completely against is top-down housing targets which are imposed on local communities. Instead, I want a simpler planning system, but that has local community support for it.
I mean, you're not engaging on the issue of whether you have parliamentary support. Let's try another one. One big thing that you could do to get people back to work, which I understand is a priority for growth, is to change the way that childcare works in this country. What's the plan for that?
Well, we do want to make childcare more affordable. We want to make it simpler for parents to access. The Education Secretary Kit Malthouse is working on plans for that at the moment, and we will announce them in due course.
Okay, and what about inheritance tax? You fancy scrapping that?
I'm not going to make any tax announcements on behalf of the Chancellor, I can assure you.
Do you trust the Chancellor, incidentally? Because you were asked 3 times this morning if you did.
I do trust the Chancellor, absolutely. Yes? Well, I think there are all kinds of other questions I got asked as well, but of course, you know, the Chancellor is a very close colleague of mine. We work very closely together.
I just want to move on because we don't have a huge amount of time. On Ukraine, how worried do you think people in this country should be about talk of nuclear weapons? I mean, does that keep you up at night?
Well, what I think we shouldn't be doing is responding to Vladimir Putin's saber-rattling. You know, he is trying to make people worried and fearful. What we have to do is we have to continue to support the brave Ukrainians in what they're doing, and that's what I've committed to. I've committed to at least the same level of support as we've given them before in terms of the weapons we're sending.
Does it worry you though? Does it keep you up?
I think people should be focused on supporting Ukraine, because if we don't support Ukraine, and if Putin succeeds, we will see even worse taking place across Eastern Europe.
Well, on that particular point, Ukraine has asked to join NATO. Will the UK be giving Ukraine its full support?
Look, I don't think that's an immediate issue of Ukraine joining NATO. What I have committed to is that Ukraine needs to have NATO-level equipment, and that's what we're focused on delivering with our allies.
But you can't say that the UK would support that bid?
Well, that is not on the table at the moment. What is on the table is providing Ukraine with NATO-level support.
I want to end just by asking you, what have you learnt in the last couple of weeks in this job?
Well, this is a very, very tough time we're in, and we've had to act quickly and decisively. But what I have learnt is that we need to do more on laying the ground, and that's what I'm committed to doing in the future.
But I've asked you to do that today, and you haven't helped do that.
We need to get the policies agreed internally, and then we need to lay the ground, Kate.
Does it feel quite lonely being Prime Minister?
No, I feel like I've got lots of people helping.
And I want to ask you, just before we leave, there are lots of people for whom you are quite new. They don't really know what kind of person you are. How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
It's quite hard to encapsulate it in 3 words. I'm a determined person. I'm somebody who wants to get things done and wants to deliver things. And I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about our future.
Liz Truss, thank you very much.
Thank you.